It's been said that Florida's head coaching search starts and ends with Lane Kiffin. But what if Lane Kiffin decides to stay out of Ole Miss, or he ends up taking one of the other big-time openings at maybe Penn State or LSU? Then what's Florida's next option? Now, I've seen a lot of Eli Drinkwitz thrown out there, which I think will be a horrible fit because Eli Drinkwitz doesn't really have any ties to the Florida area. He doesn't really know anything about recruiting the state of Florida. Now, he definitely could do a good job of learning on the fly, being able to adapt, but ultimately, I think Eli Drinkwitz will be better suited coaching at Penn State, with him already having success recruiting and using the transfer portal at Missouri and a university that kind of is located in the middle of nowhere. He's better suited to have success at Penn State. Now, I think personally, if Florida doesn't land Lane Kiffin, Jedd Fisch is more than likely going to be the guy who they end up giving that phone call to. Jedd Fisch is a Florida alum. He coached under Steve Spurrier as a graduate assistant, and Florida pretty much is his dream job. And Jedd Fisch is one of the more underrated coaches in college football that I think is going to be in more consideration for these big-time head coaching vacancies than what the national media is talking about. I don't see any Penn State, LSU, Florida hot boards with Jedd Fisch on them. And it's really strange to me because you're looking at a guy that runs a hybrid NFL college football program. Not only does he have a background coaching in college football, but he also has a lot of experience coaching at the NFL level. He spent a little bit of time with the Patriots, the Rams, and you can see that with how he goes about his recruiting. It's not all about stars all the time. Sometimes he's looking for guys that have NFL traits that can be developed, and he's done a really good job of that at Washington. With this team losing Kalen DeBoer 2 years ago, being removed from the national championship, for him to still have this team and contention for making it to the Big Ten title game and the playoff hunt is a testament to how good of a coach he is, because Washington was supposed to be in rebuild mode. This was supposed to take at least 3 years to turn this team around. With how much Jedd Fisch had to overhaul that roster, I believe if Lane Kiffin doesn't end up taking the Florida job, Jedd Fisch is going to be the guy. And I believe that Jedd Fisch will have a lot of success as Florida's head coach. Now, it would be a hire that probably gets a bunch of pushback, because unless you really are up to snuff with West Coast football, or you're just a diehard college football fan, Jedd Fisch, seeing the news of him potentially getting hired by Florida probably would make you go, who the hell is this dude? Well, Jedd Fisch turned around Arizona. In 3 years, he took one of the worst programs in the Pac-12 and turned them into a 10-win team, and he's done the same thing pretty much at Washington. And it's unfortunate that he's being brought up in these head coaching openings, because Washington is a really good job, but unfortunately, they've been more of a stepping stool job, a job that coaches get to help catapult them into a bigger job elsewhere at what they presume to be a bigger program. If Washington could find a head coach that actually has some ties to that university, that actually wants to stay there and wants to die there as a head coach, I think they could end up possibly finding somebody who could win them a national championship. And if they can keep Jedd Fisch around, I do think that he does have that kind of potential. Look how well he's recruiting at Washington. He's recruiting the West Coast as good as Dan Lanning, Lincoln Riley, and anybody else in that part of the country. So if you take Jedd Fisch, who already has West Coast pipelines, and you put him in Florida, you're going to get a recruiting juggernaut. I believe that Jedd Fisch will be a better recruiter at Florida than what Lane Kiffin would be, due to how good he can recruit the West Coast area. And with him having all this easy access to this Florida talent, with him already knowing the state pretty well, I think you can consistently see Florida racking up top 5, top 8 recruiting classes year after year with Jedd Fisch as the head coach. And Jedd Fisch doesn't really rely on the portal as much as what Lane Kiffin does. Now, he has no issue going into the transfer portal and picking up guys, but he more so is a guy that wants to build up his program via high school recruiting, and he's a really good recruiter. He's a really good developer of talent. He's already gotten a few guys to the NFL, such as Ted McMillan. Look at how good Jonah Coleman has been. He's going to be an NFL guy as well. He recruited him out of high school. Damon Williams, one of the better quarterbacks in the Big Ten. He got him out of high school. He's one of the better quarterbacks in all of college football. So if Florida doesn't end up hiring Lane Kiffin and they end up getting Jedd Fisch, yeah, it'll be a hire that fans probably won't initially be behind at the start. But when you actually see Jedd Fisch's body of work with what he's done at Washington, what he's done at Arizona, I think that he would be a much better hire than a guy like an Eli Drinkwitz, a James Franklin, because I don't really believe that Florida has to get a big-name coach in order to win. I think if you can just get an under-the-radar guy that recruits very well, that's a really good X's and O's guy like how Jedd Fisch is, you can win. And Jedd Fisch, look at how Arizona's offense dropped off after he left for Washington. Noah Fifita was one of the best freshman quarterbacks in America before Jedd Fisch left for Washington, and his play just completely has fallen off the cliff. He hasn't been remotely the same quarterback that he was under Jedd Fisch as what he currently is right now. So that shows you that you got a guy that not only is a good recruiter, but he also is a really good play caller. So the guys that he's recruiting, he knows how to get guys to fit into his scheme. He also has assembled a really good coaching staff as well. I definitely feel if Lane Kiffin isn't Florida's head coach, that they will end up hiring Jedd Fisch, because I think that Florida needs to hire somebody that actually has ties to this area, somebody that actually has some Florida Gator blood in them. And Jedd Fisch never played for the University of Florida. He just grew up idolizing the Gators. He is a huge fan of Steve Spurrier, like Lane Kiffin is. So if you don't get Lane Kiffin, I think that Jedd Fisch would be the next best thing. You get somebody that already knows the state, somebody that already has ties to your program. I think he will be a much better hire than Eli Drinkwitz. I really don't understand the infatuation with people penciling in Eli Drinkwitz to Florida. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. Like it just would be a mismatch to me. Jedd Fisch, with the ties he already has to this program, with how well of a recruiter and a player developer he is, and how good he is with the X's and O's, I would love to see him get the job if they don't get Lane Kiffin. James Franklin wouldn't be too bad of a hire, but are you going to beat Georgia with James Franklin? Are you going to beat some of the best teams in the SEC if you hire James Franklin? I don't think so. And everybody likes to bring up James Franklin's record against top 25 teams, but when it comes to these head coaching vacancies, though, everybody just wants to overlook that. James Franklin would be much better off at a program like FSU or Virginia Tech, where the expectations aren't really as high as what they are for Florida. With Jedd Fisch or Lane Kiffin, I believe that they would retain the majority of Florida's roster, and they instantly would be able to make Florida a contender for the SEC and the college football playoffs, which is why I believe Florida is the best available job that's on the market right now, because you're not really going to have a lot of roster turnover. The majority of Florida's best players are underclassmen. They'll be juniors next year. Some of those guys would be seniors. 70% of Florida's NIL money is tied into the majority of their underclassmen. So if you hire a guy like Lane Kiffin or you hire Jedd Fisch, I don't think those players will leave. Jedd Fisch is a very well-liked guy, well-respected by all of his players. Never heard a single bad thing uttered when it comes to Jedd Fisch's treatment of his players, of his staff. Florida already does have a pretty good staff in place. I don't think Jedd Fisch will make a bunch of sweeping changes. This is just a guy that just knows football. He knows the X's and O's, and he also is a really good recruiter. And you don't really get guys that give you the best of both worlds, like how Jedd Fisch does. Normally, you just get a guy that's a good recruiter, sucks in the X's and O's, like Billy Napier, for example. Or you get a guy that's a really good tactician, like Dan Mullen, but he isn't able to recruit as well as what he needs to win at a school like Florida. So with Jedd Fisch, you get somebody that's a really good schemer, a really good tactician, and a very good recruiter. So if Lane Kiffin doesn't take the Florida job, I think that Jedd Fisch more than likely ends up being the guy who they get.